The episode begins with a girl with ponytails and glasses, very nerdy, asking Iori, the protagonist of the story, if they are going to watch a movie when they get home. She is happy, but his mood changes when Iori declines this. He apologizes, saying he needs to go do something just for today, but she gets angry, thinking it's an excuse. Iori leaves and she just sighs and let him be. But in reality, Iori had other plans. He goes to another classroom and talks with another girl, while the glasses girl starts to cry in silence, calling Iori an idiot for this. The next day, Iori prepared to leave for school, lazily fixing his uniform while commenting to himself that since his parents were away on a business trip overseas, he had to make the most of the freedom. It had been several days of complete indulgence, late nights, games, and doing whatever he pleased without anyone nagging him. That was how he had spent his entire spring break. A period of total self-gratification and irresponsibility that was now coming to an end. His younger sister called out from the hallway, reminding him to hurry up, or they would be late. She sounded slightly annoyed yet full of energy. As always, she asked if he wasn't at least a bit excited about starting a new class, meeting new people, and maybe making some friends. Iori simply sighed and told her that it would be the same as always, that he had no friends and didn't expect anything to change. His sister frowned at his casual tone and muttered that it was kind of sad how confident he sounded saying that. He chuckled, amused by her reaction, and jokingly asked if she could introduce some of her friends to him instead. She quickly turned red and scolded him, saying that he shouldn't say embarrassing things like that first thing in the morning. Iori teased her a little more, pointing out how she was always so energetic while he could barely stay awake, earning himself another glare before they both stepped out of the house together. On their way to school, they chatted casually about small things. The walk was peaceful until Iori's sister spotted a girl walking ahead. She waved enthusiastically and called out to her. The girl turned, her dark hair swaying slightly, and smiled. Apparently, her name was Hyuka, and from how she greeted Iori's sister, it was clear they knew each other well. However, the cheerful air changed instantly when her eyes met Iori's. Her expression stiffened, and within seconds the two were exchanging sharp remarks. Hyuka had a sharp tongue and didn't hold back her opinions, teasing him for being lazy and unmotivated. Iori responded with dry, sarcastic remarks, and the two quickly fell into their familiar bickering. Despite her cold tone, a faint blush appeared on her face, revealing a side of her that made her look like the typical tsundere. Their relationship had always been complicated. Since their houses were close, they had been childhood friends, always playing together when they were younger. But one day, without any clear reason, she started avoiding him. By the time Iori realized something had changed, too much time had already passed. Now, she had gone through what many called a high school debut. Gone were her glasses and shy demeanor. She had transformed into someone far more confident and fashionable, completely different from the awkward girl he once knew. As she continued scolding him, Iori couldn't help but think that being alone might not be such a bad thing after all. Hyuka, however, seemed to think she was doing him a favor, declaring that she was the only one who dared to tell him the truth, and that he should actually be grateful. Then she sighed dramatically, saying that dealing with him early in the morning was exhausting. Iori didn't even bother replying. He simply shrugged, ignoring her words entirely. His sister, walking beside them, glanced between the two in confusion. She asked what he had done to make Hyuka act so harshly toward him, but he replied that he honestly had no idea. He had stopped trying to understand her years ago. When they finally arrived at school, the three of them went their separate ways to check the new class rosters. For Iori, a wave of disbelief washed over him since he ended up being with Hyuka. Of all the possible coincidences, they had ended up in the same class again. He could already imagine how annoying the year was going to be. With a resigned sigh, Iori was silently thinking that his peaceful, uneventful school life had just become far more complicated than he wanted. Hyuka is talking with a group of friends. One her friends asks her what was she up to during the spring break. She responds that she didn't do too much, just watching movies at home and lazing around. But her friend tells her that she is keeping her figure a little too well and his body has changed. Meanwhile, Iori was looking at them chatting by side eye, but Hyoka realizes that he was looking, so she glances with a cocky smile at him. Immediately Iori starts to fake that he is sleeping to play it off. Hyoka's friend leaned closer, lowering her voice as the group of girls chatted in the classroom. She mentioned that she had seen Hyoka receiving a love letter earlier that morning and curiously asked who had given it to her. The question caught everyone's attention toward Hyoka, clearly surprised. It wasn't that Hyoka was unpopular, far from it, but her calm, somewhat reserved personality didn't exactly make her the kind of girl who usually attracted dramatic attention. One of her friends even commented, half-jokingly, that it was unexpected for someone so plain-looking to get confessed to. Once the rest of the girls left the classroom, only Iori and Hyoka remained. She turned to him with an impatient expression, telling him to hurry up so they could walk home together. But instead of following her immediately, Iori decided to start a conversation about what he had just overheard. He commented, half-teasing, that she seemed to be quite popular lately. Hyoka looked at him with a mix of pride and annoyance before revealing, almost nonchalantly, that she received confessions like that almost every week. Iori, pretending to be surprised, said that if she was being confessed to that often, but still hadn't started dating anyone, she must be ridiculously picky, especially about looks. Hyoka narrowed her eyes and accused him of pretending not to care while clearly being curious about her love life. He denied it immediately, claiming he was just making an observation. But she smirked, clearly enjoying how easily she could get under his skin. She then mentioned that the boy who confessed this time was actually quite handsome, unlike him, and that maybe she would consider giving it some thought. She added that his name was Kyudo, from class 6, but Iori couldn't recall who that was. Hyoka told him that the boy said he would wait for her in his classroom after school. Iori didn't say anything, but the thought lingered in his mind. As they walked, Iori's mind drifted to an old memory from middle school, a time when things were much simpler between them. Back then, he had met a girl named Hiyori who sat next to him in class. She had a teasing personality and often played little jokes on him, always laughing in a carefree way. Iori had started to believe she might like him, though he also suspected he was exaggerating his own importance. When he mentioned it to Hyoka, she had bluntly told him it was foolish to think that way. A girl like Hiyori, popular and surrounded by people, was probably just being friendly. But there had been something strange about the way Hyoka said it. Her tone had been a bit too sharp. She insisted that Hiyori wasn't good for him and that he was better off keeping his distance. When Iori asked her why she was being so insistent, she avoided the question and said it was simply for his own good. Despite her warning, Iori eventually called Hiyori and confessed to her, without telling Hyoka. He had never forgotten the cold look she gave him afterward, though she never said anything about it. The memory faded as he glanced at Hyoka again, who was walking quietly beside him. Out of curiosity, Iori asked if she actually liked this new guy, Kyudo. She shrugged and said she didn't feel anything for him. Iori frowned, wondering why someone would confess to her without even knowing if she liked them back. Hyoka didn't seem to understand his point and called him an idiot, saying that she didn't plan on dating anyone anyway. Iori pointed out that she was the one who had just said Kyudo was handsome and might consider it, but now she was completely changing her tune. Her contradictory attitude left him confused. He decided to tease her a little more, saying that maybe there was someone close to her who liked her already. His cheeks turned slightly red, and Hyoka looked puzzled by the comment. Iori quickly clarified that he meant exactly what he said. Someone near her must like her, and otherwise she wouldn't be getting confessed to all the time. He added that it was probably because she was surrounded by good-looking guys. Hyoka frowned, obviously irritated by his vague and teasing tone. She told him that he was just confusing her and acting like a critic again, then snapped that he should worry more about his own pathetic and gloomy life. Her harsh words hit harder than he expected. Iori sighed and decided to drop the conversation entirely. He couldn't help but think about how she had reacted. He wondered if he had unknowingly stepped on another one of her emotional landmines. It wouldn't be the first time. Hyoka's mood swings had always been unpredictable, and he had long ago accepted that sometimes just talking to her could cause tsundere damage, as he jokingly called it. His mind wandered back to when they were children. Back then, whenever they fought or she got upset with him, She would always come by later to apologize. They would sit together, watch a movie, and things would go back to normal. It was a small ritual between them, something that had slowly faded as they grew older. Thinking about that, Iori felt a bit nostalgic. He decided that since it had been a while, maybe watching a movie by himself wouldn't be a bad idea. He went to the cinema district and checked the posters. Nothing stood out in particular, but he thought that any movie would be fine. There was still some time before the next showing, so he decided to wander around and kill some time. While walking through, he noticed something strange, a girl standing on the edge of a rooftop. For a moment, his mind froze as he realized what she was about to do. Panic surged through him, and without thinking, he dropped his bag and sprinted toward the girl. He shouted for her to wait, to not do anything reckless, telling her that there was still so much fun in life, still things worth living for. In his desperate attempt to pull her away from the ledge, he accidentally lost his balance, and they both fell backward onto the rooftop floor. The impact left them stunned. Then, realizing where his hands had landed, Iori's face turned completely red. He had accidentally grabbed her chest. Horrified, he jumped back and began apologizing, trying to explain that it was an accident. The girl stood up, brushing the dust off her skirt, and looked at him with a calm expression. She said that she wasn't planning to jump at all. She just wanted to enjoy the view. It had been a long time since she had returned to this town, and she felt nostalgic seeing it from such a high place. Iori, embarrassed beyond words, apologized again for dragging her so suddenly. She said it was fine up until the part where he had groped her, which made Iori's panic return. He started imagining himself getting arrested for harassment, pleading for her forgiveness, and insisting it had been a pure accident. She giggled softly, saying it was okay and that she wasn't going to report him. Then, she glanced at his uniform and asked if he was a student at Koryo High School. The question made him even more nervous. If she knew which school he was from, rumors might spread quickly. He muttered an excuse and quickly ran off before she could say anything else. After he disappeared from sight, the girl looked toward the direction he had gone and smiled faintly. She whispered that she knew him from a long time ago, that he hadn't really changed at all. Even after all these years, he was still the same clumsy, kind-hearted boy who instinctively rushed to help others without thinking twice. The next day, Iori dragged himself to class with dark circles under his eyes and a heavy yawn that wouldn't stop coming out. He looked like a zombie, and he hadn't slept a single minute the previous night. Every time he closed his eyes, his mind replayed the memory of what had happened yesterday, the embarrassing accident with the girl on the rooftop. The fear of suffering what he called a social death haunted him so badly that he couldn't even rest. Hyoka immediately noticed his miserable state. She frowned and told him he looked awful, her voice carrying a mix of concern and irritation. Iori groaned dramatically, asking her to understand his pain, claiming that he was in a fragile emotional state. Of course, he was exaggerating, as usual. The other girls around them giggled, making fun of his pathetic appearance. Hyoka scolded him for not caring about his sleep schedule, calling him hopeless. One of Hyoka's friends smirked and teased her, saying that she sounded like she was actually worried about him. The moment she said that, Hyoka's face turned red, and she quickly snapped back, insisting that it wasn't like that at all. Her friend only laughed harder, teasing her further. Hyoka finally said that she and Iori had just known each other for a long time, and everything else people said about them were just silly rumors. To everyone else, the relationship between Iori and Hyoka was a complete mystery. Sometimes they acted like enemies, other times like an old married couple. No one could tell if they got along or hated each other. When one of her classmates directly asked about it, Hyoka replied coldly that they were merely acquaintances, nothing more. A few moments later, Hyoka's friend asked her if she could copy her homework before class started. Hyoka refused immediately, saying that she should have done it herself. The friend sighed and then turned toward Iori, asking him instead. Startled, Iori stared at her in disbelief, wondering how someone that cute could talk to him so casually. For a brief moment, he almost let her do it out of sheer confusion, but he quickly pulled his notebook away, telling her to stop trying to charm him. His reaction made both girls laugh. The hours passed slowly. By noon, Iori was fighting to stay awake as the faint chatter of the classroom filled the air. He heard bits and pieces of a conversation about a new transfer student joining the neighboring class. Everyone seemed excited, but he was too sleepy to care. Hyoka and her friend also joined in the conversation, though Hyoka didn't seem very interested, since the transfer student was from the class next door. She didn't think they'd ever have a reason to talk. Her friend teased her, saying that the new girl was rumored to be super cute and might even steal Hyoka's crush. Hyoka rolled her eyes and brushed it off, saying she had nothing to worry about. But the classroom door suddenly burst open with a loud slam. The noise startled everyone, including Iori. A girl with blonde hair and bright eyes stood in the doorway, scanning the room before locking eyes on him. Without a second's hesitation, she rushed over to Iori's desk and hugged him tightly in front of the entire class. The whole room fell silent. Iori froze completely, unable to comprehend what was happening. The girl called his name cheerfully, saying how happy she was to see him again. It took him several seconds before the realization hit. She was the same girl he had saved from falling off the building yesterday. His mind went blank. Around them, whispers began to spread like wildfire. Hyoka's face darkened immediately, a mix of anger and disbelief as she watched them. Iori blinked in confusion, trying to recall who she was. Even though she clearly knew his name, his tired mind couldn't place her face right away. Then it hit him, it was the girl from yesterday, but had no clue what she was doing here in his classroom. Before he could say anything, Hyoka's cold voice broke the silence. She asked him who that girl was and what exactly was going on. Iori told her he didn't know either. The girl, however, kept hugging him tightly, saying it had been such a long time since they last met. Iori couldn't help but notice her pleasant scent, and the fact that her chest was pressed right against him, which made his face turn bright red. Before the situation could get any worse, Hyoka quickly stepped forward and pulled them apart with an angry glare. She told them sternly that this was a classroom, not a playground, and that they couldn't just do whatever they wanted. The girl, still smiling, apologized softly, saying that she had simply gotten carried away after such a long time. Hyoka crossed her arms again and turned back to Iori, demanding to know who the girl was, accusing him of looking suspiciously happy while clinging to her. But Iori could only stammer. He honestly didn't know. The mysterious girl then tilted her head and asked Iori if he didn't remember what happened yesterday. Iori's blood ran cold. His heart started pounding as panic set in. If she said any more than that, his reputation would be destroyed for good. Hyoka, who had caught that last part, looked immediately curious and suspicious, demanding to know what exactly had happened yesterday. The girl quickly introduced herself as Amiya, the new transfer student, and smiled warmly. Hyoka narrowed her eyes, asking what business Amiya had with a lazy guy like Iori, who in her words, never changed no matter what. Amiya said that Hyoka shouldn't speak about him that way. It was pitiful to insult someone so openly. Hyoka blinked, surprised by her words and not quite sure why she suddenly felt defensive. Then Amiya looked directly at Iori and said that she knew him. The room went silent again. Hyoka's eyes widened slightly, and Iori just stood there frozen. He tried to insist that she must be mistaking him for someone else, that this was clearly their first proper meeting. But Amiya smiled and said she couldn't possibly forget a face like his. At that moment, Iori realized that if this conversation continued, his peaceful school life would be completely ruined. Acting on instinct, he grabbed Amiya by the hand and hurriedly dragged her out of the classroom, leaving everyone, especially Hyoka, speechless. Amiya laughs, saying this is so much fun and that Iori is way too tense. For now, she says, they just need to run and hide. Once they find a quiet spot, Iori demands to know what kind of grudge she has against him. Ever since she transferred in, everyone has been talking about her, and now he's suddenly stuck in the spotlight. Amiya asks if that isn't a good thing, but he flatly denies it. She then asks if he really doesn't remember her, reminding him that they used to play together when they were kids. She explains that their fathers were close back then and tells him to think back to their early elementary school days. Iori starts to recall those memories and realizes, to his shock, that she truly was one of his childhood friends. They used to spend a lot of time together, but back then he had always thought she was a boy. She used to wear shorts and t-shirts, had short hair, and carried herself with an easy, boyish energy. That outfit alone had convinced Iori completely. Amiya bursts out laughing when she hears that, teasing him for jumping to such a ridiculous conclusion. Smiling, she says that he doesn't need to worry. His childhood friend has returned as a girl, and that should be a good deal for him. Iori, dead serious, fails to see any logic in that. She says he's still the same kind and funny guy she remembers and insists that now that they've reunited in high school, they should start hanging out again. Iori immediately refuses, saying there's no way. Amiya assumes it's because of Hyuka and asks if she's his girlfriend. Iori denies it, explaining that Hyuka would never see him that way. He adds that if people see him hanging around Amiya, it'll only make them jealous after all. She's a beautiful girl. Amiya blushes at the unexpected compliment, saying that calling her beautiful is a bit much. Still, she insists he doesn't have to worry about that. She just wants to spend time with him again. Iori, however, tells her it's better for both of them to keep some distance. The girls around school are probably already watching. Amiya frowns, pretending to think, and then asks if he's sure that's okay after all. He did accidentally grope her chest earlier. Maybe, she says, she should tell everyone at school about that. She wonders aloud what would happen to his peaceful life if she did. The threat lands perfectly. Realizing she's blackmailing him, Iori sighs in defeat. With no other choice, he agrees to be friends again. Amiya smiles, satisfied, but he sets one firm condition. She can't tell anyone about what happened. If she does, he says, he'll probably get beaten to a pulp. They head back toward the classroom together, Amiya chatting cheerfully while Iori silently curses his luck. As much as he hates to admit it, this was probably the best outcome he could get. If things had gone any further, he thinks, his social life would have been completely destroyed. For now, at least, peace might still be possible, though he has a bad feeling that with Amiya back in his life that peace won't last long. When they reached the classroom, Hyuka wasted no time demanding a full explanation. Her voice carried the sharp edge it always took when something about Iori refused to fit into the neat box she had built around him. He fumbled for an excuse, offering the kind of vague, half-true explanations that could not possibly satisfy someone who already suspected too much. Hyuka did not accept it. To her mind, any sign that another girl seemed to know him well, and worse, that they had acted like a couple in front of everyone. It was inherently suspicious. She jumped to the worst plausible conclusion. Amiya must be an ex-girlfriend. Iori denied it outright, but Hyuka only hardened her expression. But she knows that he had never been the type to actually have a girlfriend. That might not be the conclusion. Iori insisted that Amiya was nothing more than a childhood friend from before Hyuka moved away. The name meant nothing to Hyuka, and she erupted, screaming that she had never heard of such a girl, that Iori's stories were always full of holes and half-memories. He tried to explain that Amiya had lived in the neighborhood long before Hyuka's family had relocated, that the timeline made sense if she would only listen. But the more he explained, the less convincing it sounded to Hyuka. She demanded to know why Amiya had been clinging to his arm the way she had. He denied that they had been behaving like lovers and insisted nothing romantic had happened. Hyuka did not see denial as proof. The image of Iori pressed against another girl's warmth repulsed her more than she expected, and she gave him an ultimatum that felt half anger, half wounded pride. It was unbelievable, she said, that he could act like a fool and let himself look shameless simply because a girl happened to be cute. In Hyuka's eyes, there was something disgusting about surrendering dignity for the sake of a pretty face. Iori, by contrast, teased her mercilessly, suggesting that she was only saying such harsh things because, somewhere deep down, she wished she could behave like that too. He said she probably wanted to be the object of someone's affection as much as anyone. Hyuka laughed the suggestion off so loudly it rang in his head, and then her anger returned. She called him an idiot and, with a contradicting note of despair, admitted that perhaps this new development could be good for him. The idea that Iori might have someone around who doted on him made him look less like the permanent loner he'd always been, and for a sliver of a moment he thought having someone care for him did not seem so bad. The thought was immediately complicated by the fact that Amiya did not treat Hyuka with the same frosty indifference she reserved for him. Amiya's bright energy felt like a light that revealed Hyuka's own shadows. At that exact moment, Amaya appeared in the doorway and called out to Iori, cutting through the charged atmosphere. Hyuka flared with immediate annoyance at being interrupted mid-rant by the very person who had provoked her. She made a mental note that even if Amaya shouted his name from across the corridor, Iori would never be the sort of person to respond so eagerly. Yet he did. He stood, moved toward Amaya, and without hesitation left Hyuka rooted in place. The movement was small but devastating. Hyuka could not understand what was happening and pounded her fist against the wall in a sudden, private fury. Later, when the classroom had calmed, Hyuka's friend noticed how drained and oddly forlorn Hyuka looked while perched on her desk. The friend asked what had happened. Hyuka answered that she felt empty, as if people saw her only as a cold, distant person when she had never asked for that label. Her friend refused to accept the cold label and said Hyuka was simply the type who kept to herself, a downer by nature more than a deliberate ice wall. The reassurance did little to steady her, though. In truth, Hyuka felt hit by a peculiar kind of fear. Amaya's bright presence suggested change, and change frightened her. Her friend listened and then gave the kind of blunt advice only friends could give. She was furious at the idea of Iori and a childhood friend acting all lovey-dovey while Hyuka sat by, and she suggested a plan. If Hyuka had been on the sidelines long enough, perhaps the answer was not to withdraw further, but to try another tack, to show a side of herself people rarely saw. The friend proclaimed herself a genius of love tactics and urged Hyuka to act a little spoiled, to let the occasional small softness slip through the edges of her habitual reserve. The idea was simple since coldness made people wonder. A sudden, unexpected warmth made them notice. Hyuka confessed she had no idea how to act cute. Being a tsundere in fiction was one thing. Performing it in waking life felt different. Still, she forced it, practicing a hesitant smile until it felt less like a mask and more like a tiny, truthful curve. Her friend left impressed and insisted they talk on the phone that night to refine the plan. Hyuka watched her friend go and then sat for a long time, hands folded, wondering whether she would be able to make all these things by her own. Meanwhile, Iori returned home exhausted. The day had been a blur of awkward glances and half-confessions, and the walk back with Amaya sitting near him made his thoughts whirl. He lay on the sofa and stared at the ceiling, trying to imagine what tomorrow would bring now that Amaya had arrived. The house felt both familiar and strangely altered. His sister burst in with the imperious energy only younger siblings could muster, ordering him to move because she wanted to watch her drama. Iori grumbled but complied, shifting aside so she could start the show. The television filled the room with handsome faces and dramatic music. Iori watched half-heartedly until it hit him that these glossy stories were what his sister and so many others seemed to find entertaining. A small worry rose in him one day his sister would have a boyfriend, and when that happened he vowed, half in jest and half in earnest, that he would judge any suitor accordingly. His sister quirked an eyebrow at his sudden protectiveness and accused him of being overbearing. Iori defended his future Brocken status with clumsy seriousness, promising to intervene if any boy crossed lines. Outside the little domestic scene, Hyuka forced a practiced smile and talked with her friend on the phone, probably plotting something related to Hyuka acting cute. Concluding the scene.